Kevin Beats just pulled off the boldest move in Beats family history. While Tony walked away from an old cut he swore was dead ground, Kevin went back in, quietly, alone, and without permission. And what he found hiding beneath his father's abandoned dirt isn't just shocking, it changes the entire season. Because Kevin didn't stumble on a little gold. He uncovered a geological glitch in the ground Tony mined for years, a hidden channel sealed by ancient sediment, loaded with untouched pay that no one knew existed. One bucket turned into a pocket turned into a cavern. And that cavern, it now appears to be worth more than $70 million. This wasn't luck. This was calculated, secret, and borderline unbelievable. And the craziest part? Tony didn't find out until Kevin was already waist-deep in the richest ground the Beats have ever touched. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because what Kevin Beats pulls off in the shadows of his father's abandoned cut is something Gold Rush has never shown you before. Kevin always knew there was something off about Tony's dead ground. While the rest of the Beats crew wrote it off as a waste of diesel and daylight, Kevin kept circling it like a riddle carved into the earth. When everyone else clocked out, he stayed. When the engines cooled and the gold room lights shut down, he wandered the edges of that forgotten cut with a flashlight and a stack of old, half-rotten survey logs he'd pulled from a storage crate Tony didn't even remember owning. Pages were water-stained, corners burned, whole sections missing, but the mistakes were still visible. Numbers crossed out, depths misread, angles drawn by hand instead of machine. Someone, decades ago, tried mapping a channel here, but the line didn't match Tony's reading at all. And that's when Kevin noticed the markers. Subtle alignment scratches carved into bedrock, barely visible, pointing not straight down the valley but diagonally, like whoever worked this ground before knew something Tony didn't. They aligned toward a ridgeline nobody had ever thought to scan deeply. The idea sank in like a stone. The pay wasn't gone. It was hiding, buried deeper, shifted by time, by slump, by water movement no one had accounted for. Tony's assessment didn't feel wrong. It felt incomplete. But Kevin didn't make an announcement. He didn't call a meeting. He didn't go looking for permission. He went looking for answers, and answers require testing ground. So while the camp slept, Kevin rerouted equipment one machine at a time. Dragline left cooling near the pond, loader idling behind a fuel station, excavator brought down slow and quiet past the lights where Tony wouldn't see it if he happened to wander outside. No radios, no chatter, no spotlights. Just that low, steady hum of a diesel engine moving under the cover of midnight air. He peeled back the surface cautiously, 8 feet at a time, making sure the walls remained unchanged so no one would notice a new bite carved into the cut. The first pan he pulled wasn't impressive. A few flakes, dusty stuff. Nothing Tony would even bother bending over to look at. But Kevin saw something in it. The texture, angular, rough. Not the rounded, river-worn stuff they normally get in the region. This gold felt young, close to the source, a sign that something untouched, something far older and richer than Tony ever imagined, might be sitting deeper. That pushed Kevin into full investigation mode. He opened up forgotten archives, the kind of historical mining maps most crews ignore, and there it was, a complex maze of 1930s drift tunnels cutting under the region, some collapsing, some ending abruptly where old-timers claimed water changes forced them out. Then he noticed something else, old claim overlapping lines and hand-drawn attempts to redirect an upstream channel. Attempts that may have accidentally rerouted gold deposition right under Tony's abandoned ground. But the biggest discovery wasn't on paper. It was beneath their boots. Kevin saw it in the soil compaction, a pressure differential where there shouldn't be one. Layers too tight above softer gravel that felt unmined, untouched. It meant a buried channel had never been accessed, never even been touched. The slump Tony mentioned, a minor slide decades back, had masked the entrance entirely, bearing the true pay beneath a false layer of worthless muck. The ground wasn't dead, it was hidden. Armed with that realization, Kevin went deeper, running seismic scans at night using recalibrated settings to compensate for Tony's old readings. And that's when the world under the cut lit up. An anomaly. a massive, oval-shaped chamber completely outside Tony's scan range. A pocket too big and too perfect to be natural debris. A structure consistent with a trapped ancient channel where gold settles for centuries, even millennia. Kevin felt his heart pound. He wasn't chasing a hunch anymore. He had evidence Tony never saw, signs pointing toward a potential multi-million-ounce deposit buried under the ground his father abandoned. Time for a plan, but not the kind Tony liked. Not a bring the whole crew and move the wash plant in plan. This had to be silent, controlled, invisible until the last possible moment. Kevin drafted a blueprint only 2 other people ever saw, 2 operators he trusted more than anyone. He labeled it a maintenance schedule update, but it wasn't maintenance at all. It was a phased excavation, conducted entirely in the blind spots of the Beats camp routine. He rerouted fuel logs, shifted loader hours, disguised equipment movement as routine servicing. Every red flag Tony might have spotted was buried under layers of perfect normalcy. At night, the 3-man ghost crew descended into the cut. Kevin peeled back old tailings with surgical precision, revealing deeper, darker gravel not seen since before Tony even owned the land. The texture changed beneath the excavator's teeth. The color shifted. The signature. This was the same type of pay gravel documented in historical archives connected to some of the richest ancient channels ever discovered in the Yukon. And with every bucket Kevin lifted, his theory strengthened. Not only had Tony missed the real channel, but the richest part of it might still be sealed. Locked in place by the slump that fooled everyone. The deeper he worked, the more undeniable it became. This ground was not dead. It was hibernating, waiting, preserved. Kevin wasn't reviving an old cut. He was uncovering something untouched, unmined, and potentially explosive. When his excavator teeth scraped into a layer that didn't match anything in Tony's geological expectations, compacted, organic, older than any soil structure in the entire region. He felt the shift instantly. This wasn't leftover Beats ground. This was the beginning of something sealed off for thousands of years. Kevin barely had time to register the find before the cut reacted. The pay streak didn't just improve, it surged. Within minutes, the riffles were choking, the flow fighting to clear mats now loaded with gold far heavier than anything the cut had ever produced. And this wasn't the smooth, river-worn color Tony's best days were known for. These pieces were sharp, angular, barely traveled, gold that hadn't moved more than a few feet from its source. That single detail confirmed Kevin's suspicion. The channel he'd just opened wasn't mined by old-timers, modern crews, or even Tony himself. He had broken into untouched country. Then the excavator teeth cracked through a layer so dark it seemed like a shadow trapped in the earth. A black organic seam, thick and rich with ancient debris. The kind that forms only when a river shifts suddenly and violently. That kind of shift doesn't happen in decades or centuries. It happens in epochs, thousands of years. Kevin froze as he brushed his glove across that sediment. Ancient river structure, untouched, unexposed, unworked. Everything in it would have been sealed away since long before mining ever existed in the region. And ancient, undisturbed river systems don't hold loose gold. They hold motherlodes. Kevin knew the look, the feel, the density of that black layer. It was the exact geological signature tied to deposits worth $50 million or more. The kind documentaries talk about. The kind the legends whisper about. The kind Tony Beats himself had chased his entire career but never found in pure form. But the earth had one more secret waiting. Ground-penetrating radar scanned through the black layer and hit something unexpected beneath the bedrock shelf. An empty, a hollow, a void so clean and so deliberate that Kevin had to double-check the reading 3 times. Cavities this size don't just exist beneath hard ground unless something carved them out and sealed them in. The scan shaped itself like a crescent, a natural bowl carved deep under the slope, lined by mineral-dense gravel that hadn't moved in centuries. Gravel this tightly packed under undisturbed sediment meant one thing, a paleo channel. But not just any paleo channel, a trapped one, a sealed one. Kevin's mind raced through the old drift maps, the water shift theories, the slump event. A landslide likely thousands of years old must have buried the mouth of the channel completely. The river that once fed it changed course, abandoning the pocket and letting time seal it off like a tomb. No water to wash gold out, no movement to disturb it, no mining to scrape it clean. The gold inside would have collected endlessly, settling into the hollow like coins falling into a giant stone vault. And the shape of that cavern, the way it dipped, curved, funneled, it looked exactly like a natural sluice box. A formation designed by geological accident to trap and hold every ounce of gold that ever ran through it. The perfect vault, hidden right beneath ground, Tony had dismissed as worthless. Tony's original scans never reached this angle because they were calibrated for surface channels, not ancient subsurface anomalies. He never saw any of this, never even got close. But Kevin was deep inside it now. The next step had to be discreet, not for drama, for protection. One wrong whisper, one wrong noise, one piece of gossip between operators, and the entire thing would collapse under its own notoriety. So he kept it small, controlled, barely lit. The cleanup wasn't run through the normal wash plant. That would have been suicide. Instead, Kevin set up a single double sluice under the cover of darkness, moving pay a bucket at a time, operating with the tension of a man defusing a bomb. And then it happened. The mats didn't just load up, they drowned. Gold packed into them like dense moss, thick and bright and defiant. It clung to the matting in layers, not streaks. The riffles looked carpeted in yellow. Kevin's hands shook when he lifted the first section. This wasn't a good result. This wasn't a strong cleanup. This was something else. This was unreal. This was a secret screaming to stay hidden. He scraped the mats down into a pan, and the noise alone, the weight hitting metal, was wrong. Too heavy, too fast, too much. When he finally weighed the cleanup, the number hit him in the gut like a physical blow. It was 4 times the best single-day total Tony had ever pulled from that cut in its prime years. 4 times. And this wasn't even the main pocket. This was the edge, the outskirts, the margin of the real cavern. Kevin locked the gold away immediately, sealing it inside a heavy container he buried beneath the diesel shed, far from the gold room, far from Tony's eyes, far from anything that could give away what he was sitting on. If Tony even glimpsed this amount of gold coming from the dead cut, it would trigger questions he wasn't ready to answer. The discovery was too big, too early, too dangerous. He needed time. He needed proof. He needed to secure the Motherlode before anyone else touched it. And that thought haunted him as he brushed the last streak of gold dust from his gloves. This cleanup, just a cautious skim off the cavern's surface, already hinted at something far beyond anything the Beets family had ever mined. It wasn't hype. It wasn't wishful thinking. It was proof. And the real core still sat untouched, sealed under layers that hadn't seen daylight in thousands of years. Kevin knew there was only one direction left to go, so he pushed deeper. The excavator gave a faint shudder, just enough to make him ease off the controls. When he re-engaged, the bucket teeth slid into material that didn't behave like rock. It flexed, then fractured. A heartbeat later, the cavern wall collapsed inward, with a soft, ancient sigh, as though it had been waiting for this moment. What spilled out didn't look real. It wasn't dirt, it wasn't gravel, it was a shining cascade. Gold mixed so densely into the pay that the entire collapse glowed under the work lights. The first bucket came up heavy, bright, impossible. This wasn't normal concentration. This was the kind of strike old Yukon legends whisper about. Lost channels, sealed pockets, geological miracles that miners spend lifetimes chasing and never find. Kevin jumped down and scooped a handful through his fingers. Pure yellow flakes, big, angular, young. He could feel the weight just in the handful, loose gold flowing out of a cavern wall like sand. The crew was stunned into silence. Then one of the operators grabbed a pan and ran a quick wash right there on site. They swirled it under the dim nightlights and watched the black sands pull back to reveal a crescent so thick and bright it looked painted on. When they weighed the sample, it calculated out to almost $20,000 from a single pan. No exaggeration, no mistaken conversion. Raw numbers. That was when the air shifted. The men's breathing changed. They knew. They knew exactly what this meant. No miner sees numbers like that unless they've hit something worth tens of millions, minimum. And this was just the edge of the cavern, the spillover, the place where gold escapes, not where it concentrates. The problem was simple. There was no hiding a strike like this for long. The sound of metal tearing through virgin pay, the faster engine cycles, the extra idling hours, it all added up. Tony began hovering around the main site, asking casual questions that weren't casual at all. Things like, why's the 480 logging so many hours? And who moved the dozer after midnight? Kevin had to pivot fast. He shifted excavation windows deeper into the night, spacing out bucket cycles so the noise wouldn't spike. He started pulling machines into maintenance lanes, so their activity logs looked normal. And when Tony got too close, Kevin threw decoys at him. Hydraulic issues, fuel contamination, sensor faults, anything to stall him long enough for the real work to continue unseen. He even staged a minor breakdown with a loader, killed the fuse, pulled a hose, whatever it took, and kept Tony's attention locked on the wrong side of camp while his two loyal operators pushed the cavern expansion deeper. Every inch had to be covered, colors hidden, tracks brushed. They stretched a massive tarp across the cavern entry, anchored with boulders so the golden hue of the pay couldn't reflect out into the open. The two operators swore absolute silence. They understood the stakes. Revealing the find before it was secure wouldn't just spark chaos, it would kill the entire operation. Tony would storm in, seize control, and possibly blow out the cavern before they reached the true core. And Kevin wasn't about to let that happen. Not after getting this far, not after seeing what was trapped inside. But even Kevin knew he needed an outside read, someone who could confirm what they were looking at without alerting anyone else. Someone who could interpret structures older than any modern mining blueprint. So he contacted a retired Yukon geologist he trusted, a man who had spent decades studying ancient channels and glacial movement. They brought him in after midnight, hood up, hood down, slipping him into the cut like a ghost. The moment the geologist stepped into the cavern, he froze. He looked at the walls the same way archaeologists stare at ruins no one knew existed. He explained quietly, with the calm of someone uncovering the truth of a forgotten world. The cavern wasn't just a pocket. It was a glacial trap formed between two competing ice flows thousands of years ago, a rare geological phenomenon. As the ice sheets ground against one another, they carved a depression that acted as a natural dead zone. Anything that washed into it, water, gravel, gold, stayed there. Layer after layer, century after century. And then, when the flows receded, collapsing sediment sealed it shut like a vault. No outflow, no erosion, no disturbance. The gold had nowhere to go. It simply accumulated, locked beneath time, waiting. He traced his hand along the gravel-packed curve of the cavern and nodded slowly, almost reverently. This, he said, was one of the rarest formations he'd ever seen outside academic literature, a structure capable of producing extraordinary concentrations of gold, a once-in-a-lifetime deposit, maybe once in a century. The estimated volume alone made his voice tremble. If the cavern held the same density for even 30 more meters, it would place the strike among the top-tier discoveries in Yukon history. Not just rich, monumental. Kevin stepped back, silent, absorbing the numbers, the implications. His private calculations were already racing. The cleanup totals, the density of the spill, the depth of the black layer, the thickness of the gravel seam, the shape of the cavern. Every variable pointed toward one staggering conclusion. If the formation continued even half the distance the geologists projected, they weren't sitting on a $10 million strike or a $20 million strike. The number staring Kevin in the face was 70 million. 70. And even that felt conservative. Because the cavern hadn't narrowed yet. It hadn't faded. It was widening. The more Kevin processed it, the more impossible it seemed that Tony had walked right past this. But he had. And now Kevin was standing at the edge of something so massive it could rewrite their entire legacy. The cavern still stretched forward into shadow, untouched and waiting for the bucket that would finally expose whatever lay buried at its core. Kevin eased the machine forward and took that step. He widened the cut with slow, calculated precision, peeling back the sealed paleo channel inch by inch. Each bucket broke deeper into the ancient riverbed, and every layer proved the same thing. This wasn't a one-off pocket. It was a full system. The deeper he pushed, the richer the ground became. Nugget clusters began appearing in the pay, tight, heavy formations that clung together like berry bunches, some as large as bottle caps. Their orange-red tint told Kevin everything he needed to know. Quartz fed, nearby, close to the source. Gold this fresh and angular didn't travel. It fell right where the vein let go. As the excavation moved down, the character of the pay shifted again, darkening into a deeper orange-red that almost glowed under the lights. It looked like rusted fire, and Kevin knew exactly what caused it. Iron-rich gravels mixed with high-grade quartz runoff, a combination that almost always indicated a massive gold-generating structure somewhere upstream. He marked the boundaries meticulously, following the curvature of the deposit until something unexpected happened. The channel didn't continue in the direction he anticipated. It bent sharply, curling back under Tony's old access road, the same one that had carried trucks in and out years ago when Tony first declared the cut tapped out. The realization cracked through Kevin like electricity. They had been driving over the Motherlode the entire time. Tony, the king of the Klondike, had literally paved his road over a $70 million deposit without realizing it. The more Kevin exposed, the more the truth revealed itself. This wasn't just a good find. It wasn't even a great one. It was a geological jackpot, a structure so dense and so perfectly preserved that the word Motherlode didn't feel like exaggeration. It felt like understatement. The cavern wasn't ending. It was widening. The concentration was climbing, and the channel was feeding directly toward the heart of something massive. But secrets like this don't stay hidden forever. Tony spotted the mistake almost by accident, a fresh set of tire tracks leading toward the abandoned cut. Tracks that shouldn't exist. Tracks that didn't match any machine on the official work logs. Years of mining had trained his eyes to catch even the smallest disturbances, and these were anything but small. He followed them, irritation sharpening into suspicion as he traced the pattern straight to the mouth of the old cut. The tarp, the freshly moved dirt, the shift in the air. He stepped inside just as Kevin's excavator bucket rolled over and dumped another glowing load of pay onto the pile. The gold hit the ground with a dull, heavy thud. Even in the cave's dim light, the brightness was unmistakable. Raw, wet, brilliant. And Tony froze. The anger that had been building on his face evaporated instantly, overwritten by something he almost never showed. Shock. Real shock. His eyes widened as he stepped forward, grabbing a handful of pay, letting the chunks slide through his fingers. The gold clung to his gloves. The color burned in his palm. And suddenly he wasn't the furious father demanding answers. He was a miner staring at the kind of strike he'd spent decades chasing. "Where the hell did you find this?" he muttered, but the tone wasn't rage anymore. It was disbelief. Kevin climbed down from the excavator slowly, ready for a blow-up that never came. Tony wasn't blind. He saw the markers, the exposed layers, the structure of the channel, the sediment patterns Kevin had carefully mapped. He realized instantly what had happened. Kevin had outsmarted the ground Tony himself had written off. He had seen something Tony missed, followed clues buried in old logs, and uncovered a system Tony had assumed was gone. The confrontation shifted in a heartbeat from accusation to revelation. Tony demanded answers, yes. How Kevin hid the work, how he moved the machines, how he kept the noise down. But underneath every question, there was something else. A glint of pride, respect, a recognition that his son had just done something extraordinary. And then came the numbers. Once the final yield estimates were calculated, the cavern's true scale became undeniable. Sample tallies, density readings, volume projections, and the geologist's depth map all aligned on one staggering figure. Over $70 million in recoverable gold. Not speculative, not hypothetical, real, proven, measured. The old cut Tony had dismissed as worthless was officially the richest ground the beats had ever touched. Kevin didn't make a show of presenting the findings to the family. He laid out the data quietly, explaining the structure, the formation, the slump event, the sealed channel, the true age of the cavern. He showed them the yield charts, the geological scans, the pay streak distribution. He didn't need theatrics. The gold spoke for itself. And when Tony took the mic during the morning briefing, the entire crew waited for the explosion that never came. Instead, Tony did something unexpected. He credited Kevin, fully, publicly, called his son's work the smartest move in the entire Beats dynasty, said no one had ever outthought the ground quite like this before. The abandoned cut, once written off, ignored, forgotten, became the richest mine site the family had ever operated. A historical footnote transformed into a legend. Operators whispered about it for days. Other miners couldn't believe it. The idea that Kevin had secretly reworked dead ground and uncovered a motherlode worth more than most entire seasons felt impossible. Yet there it was, piled in gold buckets, stacked in cleanup bins, shimmering through the riffles like sunlight. Kevin's gamble had paid off. His patience, his secrecy, his refusal to accept the verdict of dead ground had rewritten the Beats legacy. And the world would soon know. Beneath the dirt Tony Beats abandoned years ago, Kevin had uncovered a $70 million truth the ground had been hiding for centuries.